Small towns feel safe. Screen doors unlocked, neighbors waving, life moving at a gentle pace. But when someone vanishes, that peace is shattered. Sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones who know exactly how to blend in. Samuel Little drifted through America for decades, a shadow moving from city to city, never staying long enough to draw suspicion. Born in Georgia in 1940, Little's early life was marked by instability. Raised by his grandmother, he spent time in juvenile detention before adulthood. He was arrested dozens of times for petty crimes, drifting through the margins of society, always slipping through the cracks. Little targeted vulnerable women, often overlooked by society, choosing victims who lived on the edges. Sex workers, women of color, those struggling with addiction. He moved from state to state, leaving a trail of victims across the country, their disappearances rarely making headlines. For years, his murders were misclassified or ignored, often written off as overdoses or accidents. His victims' cases grew cold almost instantly, their families left with only questions and grief. Decades passed. Little's name faded into the background, while families mourned in silence, their loved ones' stories untold. In 2012, a routine arrest finally linked his DNA to 3 unsolved murders in Los Angeles. The break investigators had waited for. Convicted and sentenced to life, Little seemed destined to fade away behind bars, until he started talking. In a stark interview room, he began to confess, one murder, then another, and another. The numbers grew, each story more chilling than the last. In 2018, Texas Ranger James Holland spent hundreds of hours with Little, coaxing out confessions to over 90 murders, each with haunting detail. Little remembered chilling details, faces, clothes, locations, sometimes decades after the crimes. He even drew portraits of his victims from memory. The FBI cross-referenced his confessions, matching dozens to cold cases nationwide. For some families, it was the first real answer in decades. Most of his victims were women of color, sex workers, or drug users, people society too often failed to protect. Little showed no remorse, describing his crimes with disturbing detachment. His words were cold, his memories vivid. His confessions brought closure to some families, but for many the pain only deepened. So many victims remain unidentified, their stories lost. Samuel Little died in prison in 2020, taking secrets with him, leaving behind unanswered questions and broken families. His case forced law enforcement to confront biases and systemic failures in how victims are treated. The search for justice continues as investigators work to identify the rest of his victims, hoping to bring peace to families who have waited too long. Little's legacy is a grim reminder. Monsters can hide in plain sight, preying on those the world overlooks. The story of Samuel Little is not just about a killer. It's about the lives he stole, the families left behind, and the need for justice that endures. In the end, his confessions brought some answers, but left behind a haunting question. How many stories remain untold, and how many monsters still walk among us? The forests of the American Southeast are vast, ancient, and beautiful, places where hikers seek peace and adventure. But for years, a shadow moved among the trees. Michael Hilton haunted these woods, a drifter with a dark past and a chilling purpose. Born in 1946, Hilton spent much of his life on the fringes, homeless, drifting from state to state, blending into the background. He was intelligent, manipulative, and knew how to survive off the grid, living in his van, camping in national parks, and watching hikers from the shadows. He turned national parks into hunting grounds, preying on those who felt safest among the trees. Hilton's method was chillingly simple. He would stalk isolated hikers, wait for the right moment, and strike with brutal efficiency. In 2008, Meredith Emerson, a 24-year-old hiker, vanished while hiking Blood Mountain, Georgia. She was strong, resourceful, and loved the outdoors. When Meredith didn't return home, her friends and family sounded the alarm. Search parties combed the woods, desperate for any sign. Witnesses saw her with an older man, Hilton. The search gripped the nation. News crews arrived and the hiking community held vigils, hoping for a miracle. A frantic search led to Hilton's arrest. He confessed and led police to Meredith's body. The news devastated Meredith's family and the entire hiking community. Her memory lives on in the trails she loved, but she wasn't his only victim. Investigators soon connected Hilton to other unsolved cases, each with a similar pattern, each ending in tragedy. Investigators linked Hilton to the murders of John and Irene Bryant, an elderly couple hiking in North Carolina. The Bryants were experienced hikers, married for decades, who vanished on a crisp autumn day. Their disappearance stunned their community. Search teams scoured the Pisgah National Forest, but hope faded as days passed. Eventually, their remains were found, another senseless loss. He used their ATM cards, just as he had with Meredith. In Florida, Hilton was tied to the brutal killing of Cheryl Dunlap, her remains found in a forest he frequented. Cheryl was a nurse, beloved by her community. Her disappearance sparked a massive search, with volunteers and law enforcement working side by side. The discovery of her body brought heartbreak and fear to the small Florida town, and a renewed urgency to catch her killer. Hilton's crimes were calculated. He targeted isolated hikers, used their bank cards, and left little evidence. Investigators pieced together Hilton's movements using surveillance footage, ATM records, and witness statements. He was sentenced to death in Florida and life in prison in Georgia and North Carolina. In court, Hilton showed little remorse. Families of the victims faced him, searching for answers that would never come. Hilton's violence shattered the sense of safety in the outdoors. Hikers became more cautious. Park rangers increased patrols, and warning signs appeared at trailheads across the region, reminding us that even the most peaceful places can harbor danger. The hiking community mourned together, holding memorial hikes and moments of silence for those lost. Detectives from Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida worked together, sharing evidence and building a timeline of Hilton's crimes. Hilton's motives were part financial, part sadistic. He stole cash and valuables, but also seemed to relish the fear and control he exerted over his victims. He enjoyed the power he held over his victims. Survivors and families of the victims have spoken out, sharing their pain and urging others to stay vigilant on the trails. Today, hikers remember the victims with plaques, trail markers, and moments of reflection at scenic overlooks. For those who walk the trails today, the story of Michael Hilton is a warning. Always be aware and never take safety for granted. Shaker Heights, Ohio, 1990. A town where tree-lined streets and manicured lawns promised safety. Families gathered for block parties, children rode bikes until dusk, and neighbors trusted one another with spare keys. But in September, tragedy struck, shattering the illusion of security. The night air was thick with anticipation as teenagers gathered for a party, laughter echoing down quiet streets. 16-year-old Lisa Pruett left the party to walk home, her path lit only by porch lights and the moon. She promised her friends she'd be fine. After all, nothing bad ever happened in Shaker Heights. But Lisa never arrived home. Her parents waited anxiously, watching the clock, calling her name into the darkness. At dawn, her body was found in a wooded lot, brutally stabbed just steps from her house. The news spread quickly, and panic rippled through the community. Police cordoned off the scene, yellow tape fluttering in the morning breeze as neighbors gathered in disbelief. The community's sense of security evaporated overnight. Parents kept their children close, and whispers of fear replaced friendly greetings. Candlelight vigils sprang up on street corners, and Lisa's photo appeared on every telephone pole. Suspicion quickly fell on Kevin Young, the neighbor's son with a troubled past. Rumors swirled. Kevin was quiet, kept to himself, and had once been seen arguing with Lisa. Police brought him in for questioning, searching his room for clues, but found little more than teenage angst and scribbled notebooks. But evidence was thin, mostly rumors, circumstantial details, and unreliable witness accounts. The investigation dragged on, detectives canvassing the neighborhood, retracing Lisa's final steps. Forensic teams scoured the woods for evidence, collecting fibers, footprints, and anything that might point to a killer. For years, the case stalled, haunted by uncertainty and fear. Lisa's parents pleaded for answers, their grief broadcast on local news. The community held fundraisers and memorials, determined to keep Lisa's memory alive. Advances in DNA testing brought hope, but results were inconclusive. Despite this, prosecutors charged Young 12 years later, relying on old testimonies and circumstantial evidence. The trial gripped the town, dividing neighbors and reopening old wounds. In the courtroom, Lisa's parents sat in the front row, clutching each other's hands, searching for justice. But the trial ended in a mistrial. There simply wasn't enough proof. Kevin Young walked free, but suspicion lingered, and the town's divisions deepened. Charges were dismissed, and the case remains unsolved. The murder divided the community. Some believed Young was guilty, others saw him as a scapegoat. Rumors and theories filled local newspapers, and the case became a cautionary tale for parents and teens alike. Lisa's family still seeks answers, clinging to hope that one day the truth will emerge. They visit her grave, leave flowers, and light candles on her birthday, refusing to let her memory fade. The town still feels the wound, an unspoken ache beneath the surface of everyday life. The case is a haunting reminder of how a single act of violence can fracture a community for decades. Each year, on the anniversary of Lisa's death, the town gathers for a moment of silence, united in grief and uncertainty. The files remain open, detectives occasionally revisiting leads, hoping for a break that never comes. Sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that never end. In the quiet streets of Shaker Heights, the shadow of that night still lingers. Samuel, Meredith, Lisa. Each lived where safety felt certain, until darkness crept in. These stories aren't just about victims or killers, but about the places we call home, and how fragile our sense of security can be. Evil doesn't announce itself. It hides behind familiar faces, thriving on trust. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more true stories that reveal the shadows next door. And remember, it's not just the big cities that keep the biggest secrets.